Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today's Wednesday, October 16, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. I am here in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, on the campus of Elizabeth City State University. Lots to talk about. This is a battleground state, and Eastern North Carolina is going to be critical to the chances of Vice President Kamala Harris winning this state. The first time Democrats could win the state since Senator Barack Obama won it in 2008. We'll talk to some students here, also local leaders, about what's happening on the ground when it comes to getting the black vote out, which will be critical in this election. Also, a big ruling coming out of Nebraska. The state Supreme Court there knocked down Republican efforts to prevent the formerly incarcerated folks from being able to vote. That means some 7,000 formerly incarcerated individuals will be able to vote in this year's election. Also, the DOJ secures an injunction against the state of Alabama when it comes to removing folks from the voting rolls inside of 90 days, which of course violates the Voting Rights Act. Also, on the show, Vice President Harris was in Pennsylvania today with about 100 Republicans who are endorsing her campaign. They say they're choosing country over party. Also, we'll talk about the idea of the Ferguson effect, that and more. So lots to talk about, folks. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. On the Black Star Network, let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, we are here on the campus of Elizabeth City State University, the Vikings in North Carolina. Glad to be here. Of course, we were just here on Sunday when I interviewed Vice President Kamala Harris in Greenville at East Carolina University. North Carolina is a critical state when it comes, one of the 7 battleground states that will determine the 47th president of the United States. And you know what? To get things kicked off, let's hear from the sound of class here at Elizabeth City State University. Their band. Let's go. it up for the sound of class here at Elizabeth City State University. We appreciate that. Thank you so very much. We had Fayetteville State on Friday. Now, they put some pressure on y'all now, so Fayetteville State, let's see what y'all gonna do on Friday. I'm just saying. So again, I appreciate that, folks. It's a lot we're gonna be talking about over the next couple of hours. Again, North Carolina is one of 7 battleground states where both campaigns, Harris, Walz, Trump, and Vance are duking it out. When you talk about Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, you have Nevada as well, plus Georgia. Those 7 states are huge. Of course, early voting in this state begins on Thursday. And we've already seen the results. Significant turnout in Pennsylvania, as well as yesterday, more than 300,000 folks who voted early in Georgia, breaking their single-day record. And so lots on the line when it comes to this election, determining, you know, what is next, the 47th president of the United States. Now, earlier today, Vice President Kamala, first of all, right now, Vice President Kamala Harris is they're airing an interview that she did with Fox News' Brett Baird. Now, me personally, I don't think they should have done an interview with Fox News because when you pay a $787.5 million settlement because you were advancing Donald Trump's lies for the 2020 election, to me, that means that they disqualified themselves from getting an interview, from hosting a debate, or anything along those lines. And in fact, they still are involved in the Smartmatic lawsuit. Well, they were calling into question their voting machines, and so they could very well pay more than $1 billion, even in that particular lawsuit. That lawsuit was actually about $2.5 billion. Newsmax settled with them as well, and so, but that's what's going on. So we'll have some of those clips for you during the show as well. First, though, the VP was in Pennsylvania today. More than 100 Republicans were endorsing her there. And so here's just some of what she had to say today in Pennsylvania.
I thank you all for everything that you are doing and the courage you are showing. You know, this is an extraordinary climate right now. And I think we all recognize the courage that you are each showing to speak out so publicly and to put, as we are saying, because we truly believe it, country over party. So thank you all. And can we please applaud Bob and Christina and all of the folks on the stage, please. Thank you. Thank you. Truly, thank you. So if you all have a seat, please do sit. Yes. So as I think everyone here knows, we meet in a place that holds a very special meaning for our country. Here on Christmas night, 1776, General George Washington and over 2,000 troops crossed the icy Delaware River in darkness, then marched to Trenton, where they surprised an outpost of enemy soldiers and achieved a major victory in the American Revolution. And after we won the war and achieved our independence, delegates from across the nation gathered not far from here in Philadelphia to write and to sign the Constitution of the United States. And we remember and reflect on what that moment was, knowing that leading up to that work to write, to compose the Constitution of the United States, that work was not easy. The founders often disagreed, often quite passionately. But in the end, the Constitution of the United States laid out the foundations of our democracy, including the rule of law, that there would be checks and balances, that we would have free and fair elections, and a peaceful transfer of power. And these principles and traditions have sustained our nation for over 2 centuries. Sustained because generations of Americans from all backgrounds, from all beliefs, have cherished them, upheld them, and defended them. And now, the baton is in our hands. So I am joined today by over 100 Republican leaders from across Pennsylvania and across our country who are supporting my candidacy for President of the United States. And I am deeply honored to have their support. Some served in state houses, some in the United States Congress, some worked for other Republican presidents and presidential nominees, including Mitt Romney, John McCain, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan. And some today served in Donald Trump's own administration. We also have with us Republican voters from here in Pennsylvania and beyond, who have been active in their Republican parties for years, who have supported Republican candidates up and down the ticket. Now, I say all that to make an obvious point. In a typical election year, you all being here with me might be a bit surprising, dare I say unusual. But not in this election. Not in this election. Because at stake in this race are the democratic ideals that our founders and generations of Americans before us have fought for. At stake in this election is the Constitution of the United States, its very self. We are here today because we share a core belief.
All right, folks, we live streamed that earlier, so if you want to actually see the full speech, just simply go to our Black Star Network app or go to our YouTube channel as well. Let me introduce you to 4 students here at Elizabeth City State University. To my left, we have Heaven Brown. Heaven is, of course, a class of 2025. Elizabeth's Miss ECSU. What's happening?
Hello.
All right, glad to see you, glad to see you. Y'all can clap for y'all. Go ahead, go ahead. Got Donovan Hankins, he's a senior here. Corey Simmons is a senior. We have Amor Bailey, a junior. So glad to have all of y'all. So glad to be on the campus. So Heaven, I'll start with you. What have the conversations been like amongst students when it comes to this election? Are they excited? Are they sort of like, what's happening?
On our campus, it's been very exciting. We've had a great turnout to all debates, from vice president to presidential debates.
Were y'all hosting watch parties on campus and like that? Okay.
So watch parties every time, and people showed up, whether it was with SGA or other groups. Tomorrow we have the March to the Polls. Every year, every March is always a bit March. We have the Santa Claus come out and march for us. So we have fun. The orders come out, and it's always a great time. Gotcha.
Now you got March to the Polls. Is there a polling location on campus, or is it off campus?
It's off campus, but it's so close. It's my bills be on our campus.
Oh, good. Y'all, it's like I was at A&T a few years ago. I think it was like 2 miles away. It was like a long damn walk.
No. So
what you're saying is, any student on this campus does not have an excuse not to vote because it's that close.
There's no excuse, and you can use your ID card as a Viking to vote.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, because you can't do that in Texas. But you can use a gun permit, but you can't use your state ID to actually do it. Amor, what about you? What have these conversations been like? What are fellow students talking about in terms of the issues?
Well, everybody is just stressing to vote. Just vote, vote, vote. Because this is a really important election, especially for people who can vote. And people are, still like shaky about like who they're going to vote for and everything. They feel like they're not going to vote for the right person, but every vote matters.
All right. Donovan, we're seeing across the country young sisters are outpacing young brothers. What are the conversations like among young brothers about this election?
I think on this campus, the conversations, at least that I've seen amongst men, is that we're trying to stress how important it is to vote, because everything from like your city comptroller, like everything from like the books that go in your classroom, whether or not the bus runs by your house, like those are things that can be affected by who you vote for.
Y'all gotta educate. Is it the education, Ray? Y'all got a crazy person running for education commissioner. I've been seeing some of her stuff, and I'm like, ooh, Lord, she need to be committed. But that's just me. That's just me. So folks are talking about down ballot races.
Yeah, and trying to break through that voter apathy, which is a real big issue in the community.
Gotcha. Corey, what are you hearing? What's been talked about?
Definitely, like he said, they're stressing voting on campus because this election is very important. Because this election is going to determine pretty much life. I ain't gonna lie. Like, if one person wins, it's like, if one person wins, it's going like, it's two different roads, and we got to determine which road we want to go down.
Right.
It's important.
Well, one of the things that I keep stressing, and I literally did my radio commentary before I came out here, is that Obama won this state in 2008. And y'all weren't even close to school, so that was 16 years ago. But he won this state by 14,100 votes because that was a massive black turnout. And ever since then, you've had efforts in this state by Republicans in the legislature to frankly suppress the vote. I mean, all sort of different efforts. You had a federal judge that literally ruled that was laser-like targeting of black voters in this state. And what I keep saying is, I mean, this is a margin election. So he won by 14,100. So when we say every vote counts, literally, if black folks turn out in large numbers, that could determine who's the next governor, who's the next president. And so is that also being discussed, that every vote does indeed count? Because I've interviewed a lot of young folks across the country who say, well, I just don't think my vote counts. And I keep saying, look at the numbers, it can actually be the difference.
Yes, we've definitely stressed it. And what I normally stress to students is that we're 20-something years old. We have about 50, 60 years left in this country to live. This election matters to the rest of our lives. When we graduate, this is the economy we're graduating into. This is our vote. My first president was Obama. I don't remember any other president. So it's important for us to make this vote count, and our voice does matter.
We try to forget the one that came after him, too. But I understand your point. I understand your point. But you're right, because I was asked about this, and I said, someone asked me, they said, well, you know, what's your motivation? And I said, listen, I could easily say whoever wins is not going to have a material impact on me personally. I said, but I'm doing all I can because I have 9 nieces and 4 nephews. And literally voting in an election, Donovan, is really the next 20, 30, 40 years. I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. When you talk about the Supreme Court, whoever wins the presidential race is likely going to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices, and that person is going to likely be on the court, if you look at how the justices have been going, for the next 40 years. That means if you're 20 years old now, those seats, if they or feel, won't come up again until that person is 60.
Yeah.
So is that on the minds of folks?
I think it's on the minds of some students on this campus. I know some people are more politically adept as to what it comes to what their vote means. I know it's on my mind, but it may not be on everyone's mind. So I think it's important that we go out of our way to make sure that everybody knows that the vote is just more than just turning up to the polls. It's about the future, your children's future, because all that stuff is inherently connected to itself.
So Corey and Moore, okay, take me through this. Have y'all encountered students who don't want to vote, and what are y'all telling them?
Yes, I have definitely encountered like plenty of people who don't want to vote.
And what are you telling them?
Well, my mom has this saying. She says every time you don't vote for somebody, it's a vote for somebody else.
Right.
And so I tell them, like,
my mom's saying that you don't vote, you can't eat at this house.
Oh.
And I'm with her on that. I'm with her. That's right. And look, I'm a firm believer. You cannot come to Sunday dinner unless you bring your "I voted" sticker.
But I just let them know, like, because everybody doesn't have the luxury to vote in other countries. This is a very, like, it's kind of free country, but it's a very free country. So the fact that we have the luxury to vote, we should just go out and vote. And I tell them that it's very important because even though, like, the presidential election is, like, the election everybody, like, kind of goes out to vote for, other certain smaller elections are important too.
Right.
And so they should think about this, think about, like, not voting for, like, prices and other stuff that affects us daily by the...
So, Corey, what are your debates like among brothers and sisters who say, man, I'm not feeling nothing you're saying on this voting stuff?
So, like, there's been people who's come up to me.
Hold the mic up to you, man.
Oh, yeah. There's been people that come up to me and they were asking me, like, what's the purpose of voting? Like, why do I have to vote? I'm just getting to college. I don't see a reason why it's not going to have any effect. And the thing that I tell them is think about yourself in 4 years. Think about how you're going to be, how the world's going to be in 4 years if you don't vote versus if you vote, especially for somebody that you agree with their goals.
Just hold the microphone right there. But here's the deal. Do they also not realize this is a state school?
Yeah.
Which means that your funding is determined by elected officials? So if anybody's saying, I don't understand why voting doesn't matter, it's called buildings, facilities, it's called resources. I mean, this school is directly tied to who in the legislature and the governor's mansion.
Yeah, I just feel like some people, they don't look at the bigger picture. They just look at the surface of things. Like, one thing that I say, like, that I've been living by, I always like to dig. Like, I look underneath everything. So you can see, like, the deeper aspects, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm asking each one of you, most important issue this election season. I'm going to start with you.
Most important issue?
Most important issue.
Can you come back to me?
Oh, got to come back to you. All right, Haven, I'll start with you. One or two, what's the most important for you this election?
I think education in general, a lot of things have been being put in and taken out of the education system, and we got to make sure that everyone gets the same education. And then women's rights. As a black woman, I feel like it's been attacked a little bit this past couple years, and we got to make sure we're all
just
protected.
A little bit.
We've been attacked. So definitely women's rights for me.
All right. Donovan?
I think for me, definitely education, like Kevin said, but also like a focus on public infrastructure. I think that a big part of our economy, of our GDP, has to do with our ability to produce and export and import things to and from the country. So stuff like bridges, roads, high-speed rail, all that stuff matters because it can directly affect, what you're able to buy, the bread you put on the table, stuff like that.
Corey?
To kind of piggyback off what he said, I would say inflation. Inflation has been a big thing. I think they're trying to bring the prices back down a little bit because they have been like skyrocketing it, and that's kind of like.
Well, yeah, a lot of corporations that made a whole bunch of money with major corporate profits by jacking prices up.
Mm-hmm. So
most people don't even realize the president the president doesn't determine prices.
Right.
So it's amazing these people who say, well, prices were down when Donald Trump was president. Well, they were down when Obama was president, but a president that doesn't determine those prices, those are individual companies. Mm-hmm. And they made a lot of money in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. All right, you figure out what your issues are?
Like they said before, education. Excuse me.
Don't be scared.
Like
just having a regular conversation. Don't worry about it.
Like you mentioned before, just when you vote for the president, you vote for all the people that they're going to have around them. And so, like...
I mean, their staff and different departments and cabinet secretaries.
Yeah. And so just voting for a president who is going to provide us with safety and just make sure, like...
Go ahead. We got time, baby. My flowers. We got time. We'll wait on you.
Just make sure, like... the community is good. Okay. Everybody is good.
All right, then. Yeah. All right, well, we proceed. There you go. See, that wasn't bad at all. Y'all give it up for our students here. I'm gonna go to a break. We come back. We're gonna talk some more. I got a panel Our virtual panel is back in the studio because we got some additional panelists who are here as well. Santa Claus, y'all gonna take us to the break? All right, we'll be right back with Roland Martin Unfiltered. All right, what y'all gonna do? Take it to the break.
To the break.
No, no, me, you're supposed to play something to the break.
Oh, what you want to play?
Hey, we about to go set our right now.
Yeah.
About to go right now.
Well, the half of y'all that got them, play something. The half of y'all that got them, play something. Give me a trumpet solo there. One of y'all got skills? I know one trumpet player got some skills. What y'all gonna do? All right, let's turn that camera around. Antoine, turn the camera around. No, hold up. I'm gonna make y'all come up here in the lights. Y'all come up here. I'll make y'all come up here. I told y'all my show Unfiltered. Y'all don't know what I'm gonna do. All right, let's see what y'all got. My brother played trumpet, I played cornet, so let's see what y'all got. All right, let's see what y'all got. Y'all need me to direct?
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished? There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best.
I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message. Because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
Carl Payne pretended to be Roland Martin. Holla!
You ain't got to wear black and gold every damn place, okay? Ooh, I'm an alpha, yay. All right, you're 58 years old. It's over.
And you are now watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable.
We back on the show, but we taking this alpha photo, so there's an alpha host, so y'all gotta wait. All right, here we go. Got it? All right. Y'all can head drop. There you go. All right. I appreciate it. Appreciate it, Frat. All right, folks. We are back on the show. Just hold it. So let me go introduce our panel in the studio. Rebecca Carruthers, Vice President, Fair Elections Center out of Washington, D.C. Robert Patillo, host People, Passion, Politics, News and Talk 1380 WAOK out of Atlanta. Jade Mathis, Counsel, District Legal Group out of D.C. Glad to have all three of you. Rebecca, I'll start with you. Vice President Kamala Harris sat down with Brett Baer of Fox News. So, all right, since everybody's whining and complaining about her going on the Fox, when is Trump going to sit down with MSNBC, CNN, and I know he's not going to come on this show?
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I speak for Trump or the Trump campaign, so I can't answer that. But one thing that I will say, whether people like it or not, the majority of people are getting their information from non-traditional sources. Americans going into the elections just watching their local news station to get information isn't what's happening, especially with some of the Gen X, the millennials, and most certainly with the Gen Zs. But watching the Harris campaign actually go to more non-traditional and digital sources of media, we'll see in less than 3 weeks if it pays off and if that's the strategy for the future for candidates running for president in this country.
Robert, it is very interesting again when you look at the political people. They always this one always cracks me up. They always make demands of Democrats. They don't make demands of Republicans. And we saw Trump. He just canceled on CNBC. He's supposed to be on yesterday. Then he didn't go on. He's been canceling other interviews. Sounded to me like somebody's a little squirrely when it comes to, the ability to actually have conversations.
Well, I think what we're seeing is kind of the one superpower Kamala Harris has in this race. Yesterday, I was up in Detroit with Congressman Jonathan Jackson, with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, speaking with workers and union members about raising the minimum wage on the federal level. At the same time, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who's in his 80s, was in Columbus, Ohio, meeting with clergy and community leaders. Everyone's headed down to North Carolina A&T to appear at homecoming. You have Barack Obama in Western Pennsylvania talking to black men. You have Kamala Harris sitting down with Fox News. This is what happens when you have a broad base, when you have a big tent party, when you can talk to all parts of America and be accepted in all parts of America, where you have an agenda that reaches out to the middle class and talks about building our economy from the bottom up and the middle out and not trickling down. We talk about bringing people together, not trying to divide them along lines of race and sex and ethnicity and age and income brackets. And this is why we see the MAGA movement becoming so small. The fact that you have more Republican presidents supporting Kamala Harris and supporting Donald Trump tells us a lot about what's going on in this country. When you have this small movement, this small angry movement that talks about jailing their political opposition, that talks about putting together a purge, that would give 1 day to take care of those people. When you talk about building concentration camps for 20 million people that you're going to round up door to door, what you call the largest mass deportation in American history, and the original version of it was called Operation Wetback under the Eisenhower administration. When you have that on one side of the aisle versus someone who can articulate a message about uplifting people, this is what makes the Harris campaign so strong, and this is what makes the Democrats' opportunity taking back both the House and Senate also strong going into the general election.
And of course, Jade, like clockwork, the likes of Megyn Kelly and Will Cain, all those people whining, complaining about, oh my God, how Harris couldn't answer any of these questions. Well, I guess she could have used Trump's weave answers or some of the other stuff. I mean, look, here's the reality. When you have 40 individuals who work for him now say he should never be back in the Oval Office, that is, I believe, one of the greatest indictments of anybody. When even your own vice president refuses to endorse you, probably because you tried to let him get killed.
Yeah, and it shows, like, leadership, poor leadership, right? A reflection of poor leadership because the people who were once under your leadership, and it's several people, it's dozens of people, right? It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's almost 40 people saying that. Also, this is astronomical, the support for the Republican Party for a Democratic candidate. And I think that's another thing. So, yeah, they can always comment about she's not answering certain questions, but his answers to certain questions are going to be an impromptu concert, right? A 50-song concert, right? A complete random rant about nothing, and it's going to be a concert. So if that's the comparison, then yes, I prefer him not to take the stage and to answer questions that we actually need answered in front of the Democratic Party.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm just sort of laughing, Rebecca, at the likes of this idiot Joe Concha, Will Cain, and all of these folks. Again, let me just remind people, Fox News paid a $787.5 million settlement because they routinely advanced Donald Trump's lies about the 2020 election. They knowingly lied. And then they even Brett Baier, who interviewed Vice President Harris, there are emails where he said, hey, maybe we should pull back from this because our audience is not happy that we actually called the election for Biden. They still are involved in the Smartmatic lawsuit. So let's be real clear here, Rebecca. Vice President Harris did not talk to a news organization today. She talked to the propaganda arm of the Republican Party.
It is you could call it a propaganda arm, but it's also a network that a lot of folks who are actively voting now and going to the voting booth on or before November 5th, they watch, they plug in. I mean, but we also have seen studies that show if you're an avid Fox News watcher, you are worse off and you know less about what's happening in this country than before you started to tune in. So it's kind of half a dozen in one hand, 6 in the other. I do think it's important, though, for a candidate not to have the perception that they're only talking to friendly audiences. So if this checks that box and it makes people think that, okay, she's talking to non-friendly audience, then, that is a strategy. But I don't think anyone in your audience, Roland, would say that Fox News is the harbinger of truth and factual information.
But see, look, I get what Rebecca says there, Robert, but the only difference here is literally they are the communications arm of the Republican Party. And Brett Baier, after they announced he was going to have the interview, he literally was fighting back people who were mad at him and complaining about misinformation. I'm like, dude, that's what your network does. Your network is the leading disinformation platform out of all in America. So it's no shock their audience are full of nutcases because they're fed that stuff every single night and day.
I understand, but I think it's important to talk to all audiences. And there are good people at Fox. Neil Cavuto's great. Shannon Bream is great. Brent is often fair in his interviews. I think you have to separate those from the kind of the Jesse Waters, Laura Ingrams, Sean Hannity's of the world. And at the end of the day, those Nikki Haley voters who don't like Donald Trump, they're watching Fox News. Those Romney Republicans that are going to be crossing over, they're watching Fox News. The people who are Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney supporters who endorse Kamala Harris, they're watching Fox News. So if you can get 1 out of every 1,000 people to potentially consider switching over, that might be the margin in one of these swing states. And that shows the broadness and the strength of the Harris campaign, the Harris wall ticket, because Donald Trump kills, he can't step into the arena on Roland Martin Unfiltered. He can't step into the arena on any network that isn't completely in the tank for him, because as we've seen in the last week, he melts down at even the slightest question because he understands that with any pushback, his answers fall apart.
Absolutely. And I just think that, again, Jade, fine, they did it. You move on. But you got to call a thing. And that is a network that actually is filled with a bunch of liars, and they lie every single day.
And people tune in, quite frankly, to watch that and to hear those lives, right? People are probably been following Fox for decades, the people who are currently watching, or they have some new watchers, I'm sure. But they tune in to hear that bash train, that hate train. They're tuning in to hear a particular thing, so Fox News has to give it to them.
Yep, that's exactly what happens. All right, folks, going to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about a lot more election stuff happening. DOJ gets an injunction out of Alabama. Huge ruling by the Nebraska Supreme Court when it comes to voting rights for formerly incarcerated folks there. And then we'll talk about what's happening on the ground here in North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina as well. We're broadcasting live from the campus of Elizabeth City State University. Folks, this is Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget to support the work that we do. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club so you're checking money order. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Of 100 Republicans who worked in national security for Presidents Reagan, both Bushes, and for President Trump, now endorsing Harris for president.
She came up as a prosecutor, an attorney general, into the Senate. She has the kind of character that's going to be necessary in the presidency.
Vice President Harris is standing in the breach at a critical moment in our nation's history. We have a shared commitment as Americans to do what's right for this country. This year, I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Former generals, secretaries of defense, secretaries of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, CIA directors, and National Security Council leaders under Democratic and Republican presidents, Republican members of Congress, and even former Trump administration officials agree there's only one candidate fit to lead our nation, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Wrongfully convicted.
5 teenagers were arrested, tried, convicted, and sent to prison.
No men were exonerated.
What he did to us, he tried to end us.
Of course I hate these people.
So-called Central Park 5.
Calling for execution. And let's all hate these people.
We cannot have this man go into office again.
I want society to hate him. We were innocent kids.
The confessions were coerced.
Today, we are exonerated. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict.
This is about democracy being on the ballot.
I have absolutely no compassion.
Look at Kamala. She represents the kaleidoscope of the human family. There's something different happening in America. We will get the opportunity to build a future where we will be able to thrive and not just survive.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Double checking. They have both of your names. All right, folks, we are back. Elizabeth City State University. As I keep saying, North Carolina is going to be a crucial battleground state. And we're already seeing it. Millions of dollars are being poured into this state. Television, radio ads, folks on the ground. Early voting here starts tomorrow, and so we look forward to that. Right now, we got two guests here. Introduce yourselves. Tell the folks who you are.
Good evening. I am Keith Rivers.
President of the Pasquotank County branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And we just want to say thank you, Roland, for being here in the rural part of northeastern North Carolina.
Appreciate it.
Kirk Rivers, mayor of the great city of Elizabeth City, North Carolina.
Take each other to know each other.
Ever since I've been born.
Gotcha. That's why I couldn't introduce y'all. I want y'all to introduce yourselves because everybody watching, they brothers. So it's like let y'all know that. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this election. You mentioned rural part, and the reality is when you look at Georgia, North Carolina, many of these states, you often have folks who only go to Western North Carolina. Going to much larger cities. But for folk who don't understand, explain to them how critical these large black counties are in East North Carolina.
They are very, very critical in this election. One reason is our county and this area of Northeast North Carolina is very unique because we live in what I like to refer to as the media desert. The bulk of our media comes out of Virginia because we're so close to the Virginia line. We're 20 miles from the Virginia line. So persons that have satellite don't get North Carolina news. Those that have cable, the media, the North Carolina news actually comes out of Wilmington. So we're in a very unique situation because it's very hard to disseminate information. It's hard to carry that out. And many times when persons are going to the polls, earlier the students spoke about, what are the issues when you ask them? Who's on the down ballot? A lot of times we don't get those. So you just being here is vital and is critical because our students at this university have been under a continuous attack, an onslaught, if you want to call it, by the local, by many members who are of the extremists of the local Republican Party. And this has perpetuated itself even over the last 4 months. Earlier you talked about the voting site, which is the Kermit White Center here, which is owned by Elizabeth City State University, but it's not on the internal campus. And there was a push by the local Republican Party here to remove that site.
Right.
And to take it to the local Board of Elections. And this went on for over 4 months. And they filed numerous complaints. They were frivolous. They were fraudulent.
How far away is the local Board of Elections office?
We would have had 2 voting sites within 100 yards of each other, or 200 yards, because when the state board agreed to have 2 early voting sites.
Right.
However, our local election director resigned in the month of August, followed by the deputy director. So the same Republicans that were fighting against the Kermit White Center came back, and in a unanimous vote after their resignation, which looks like the rest of North Carolina, because since 2019, 60% of the election directors in this state have resigned. Many of them cited for intimidation and just constant. Now, here in Pasquotank County, our election director nor deputy gave any reason why they resigned, but we know that complaints have been filed. They filed complaints against us from 2020.
Right.
They have continuously filed complaints about student voting. So we can see the handwriting on the wall. So we would have had 2 election sites within probably 150 yards of each other. But yet when the director and the deputy director resigned, it was a unanimous vote. And the Republicans said, okay, well, let's go to the Kermit White Center. And they've already started in talking about some of the things that they want are so unrealistic. The lighting on the building. They don't feel safe. Why don't you feel safe?
See, Kirk, the reason that people need to understand what Keith is describing literally patterns Waller County in Texas where Prairie View is. Same thing. And it's the same thing, I mean, in Fort Worth, in Arlington, Texas, University of Texas at Arlington, which is a PWI. But the Republican Tarrant County judge, he wanted to remove the early voting location off of the campus of UTA. You're talking about a university with, 10, 20,000 students, and you go faculty, plus it's easily accessible for the public because of parking as well. I remember, I think it was 2012 or so, I can't remember the year, there was a clerk in Wisconsin who admitted to purposely moving an early voting location off of a college campus because too many of the white college students were voting Democrat. And they moved it out to a place far away that had a small parking lot, and because they wanted to frustrate people. And so for people who don't understand, and I've been covering what's been happening in this state going back to 2008. After Obama, this state used to have low voter turnout, but there was massive engagement, maximum turnout in 2008, and Republicans said, oh, hell no, we can't have this. Right. And in this state, black people specifically have been under attack by Republican leadership in the legislature, even when you're Republican governors, the boards of elections, ever since Obama won in 2008.
That's right. And they continue to try to cause confusion. Elizabeth City State University, we're home of the mighty Vikings. And right here,
what's the student side? What's the population here?
This year they're on the rise. I think in the last we're probably at about 1,800.
Got it.
But the key is...
You say higher. What's the number?
2,000.
There we go.
2,200. There we go.
So when
don't leave out the other 472.
Exactly. When I was first elected, right out of graduating from Elizabeth City State University, from that point, I was elected to be city councilman. From that point right there, the Republican Party has been filing suit against ECSU, causing confusion. And
wasting money.
Exactly. And then about 6 or 7 years later, we had a student to actually run. And he was successful to take my spot. Well, what took place right after that? They've been constantly trying to keep students from voting here in Elizabeth City because of the fact that they were planning to have a Republican control, just like you talked about, because it's bigger than the city of Elizabeth City. But we have to make sure that we continue to let our students know that they are the power, that they are the strength, that if we get them to turn out and vote, to exercise, to be a part of this democratic process, then we begin to make a change. But as long as we stay divided, as long as we allow confusion, students, older people, they shy away from that. And that's something that I continue to applaud the NAACP, because they're constantly fighting to make sure that our students know IDs, constantly bringing election officials out to the campus to have informative sessions on how to register, not to just be kicked out because you put the wrong box. But that's one of the things that I'm just so proud to make sure that I'm always on the campus visiting the students, because I want them to know that they are very valuable to the future of Elizabeth City and North Carolina and the entire presidential process.
I'm going to have my panel ask some questions here after this here. But I mean, here's the thing, again, that people don't understand in this state. They were so dastardly, they split North Carolina A&T into 2 congressional districts.
We used to have that.
I can't think of any other place in the country where a university would sit in 2 congressional districts, because Republicans in this state were afraid that North Carolina A&T, being the largest HBCU in the country, that if they voted as a voting bloc, they could literally determine that member of Congress, they could determine the mayor of that town. And that's really what we're talking about here, Keith. We're talking about, and this is why I keep saying to black folks, if we understand maximizing our voting power, if you're talking about in this city, a block of 2,200 students plus staff, faculty, and then other folks. I mean, you're talking about a massive voting block. Right. And that's the thing that they're scared of. But if we maximize our power, we can be sweeping elections.
Yes. Right. And this is not just unique to this election. Students at Elizabeth City State some years back were even subpoenaed. Right. You imagine you send your child to college, they go out and vote, and then somebody walks in and hands them subpoenas. The sheriff's department walks in and issues subpoenas, and the students then have to go in front of a hearing. And that just didn't happen once, twice. It has happened 3 times. And that's that type of intimidation that is taking place in northeastern North Carolina that really mirrors what's going on. It's just exemplified here because many times that media desert that we live in, it's not covered. It's not talked about. And when you're in small and rural areas, because we don't have a lot of the resource, because we don't have numerous social justice organizations, it is very easy to target individuals. But, you know, there's a saying, maybe nonpartisan, but I'm political as hell. And we're going to protect these students. We're going to protect them as they go to the polls. We're going to protect their rights. We're going to be there for them. And that is so important because when I do talk to students, I let them know that it was young people in the 60s. You know, when they look now and they see Dr. King, they think about him as an older gentleman. But Dr. King was 25. When we look at Selma, we look at Bloody Sunday, that was John Lewis under the age of 21. That was the young people that made the difference. And this is what they have to know, that they make the difference, and it is their right. If they want to vote, they're going to vote. They're going to be protected. The Pasquotank branch of the NAACP, along with many other persons in this community, the state NAACP, we're going to ensure that when they go to those polls, that they're going to be safe, they're going to be protected, and that they're going to cast their vote for whomever they so choose. But they have to know, and that's why, again, Roland, we're just so excited that you chose to be here so that these issues can come to forefront. You know, we were here when Andrew Brown Jr. was murdered, and young man was shot in the back of the head. And the deputies went back to work here in Pasquotank County. But we took that pain, and I want our students to know and everybody to know, we took that pain and turned it into political power. Because at the very next local election, my brother became the mayor. 5 out of the 8 seats on city council were black people. Okay? And it's always not necessarily about color, but it's about people with like interests. Right. But we took that pain and turned it into political power.
And Kirk, that's the thing that I'm always, earlier I said it's math. And when you talk about politics, if you got an 8-member city council, you need 5 votes. That's right. If you got a 9-member school board, you need 5 votes. If you got a 7-member county commission, you need 4 votes. Right. And it's important for any student, any middle-aged person, any senior citizen to understand that it's a numbers game. That's right. If you look at many of these places where you have 35, 40, 45% African-American, in some places 50, 60, we could literally be running the table. So when people talk about, well, our issues are not being addressed, well, if you don't vote, it's a guarantee they won't be addressed, and then we can control it. And it doesn't, listen, I was in Montgomery, Alabama, and that was a white woman who was hardcore about making sure kids in that predominantly black city were being educated during COVID. I was at Alabama State a couple of weeks ago, and she was there, and she thanked people bringing her on the show. And so, bottom line is, there are white folks of conscience, there are Latino folks of conscience, Asian folks of conscience. You talk about it's not about race, it's about like interest. But if we let folks sit on the couches, then you literally can't change anything in the city, in the county, in the state, in the country.
That's right. It's about the numbers. And other people recognize, but sometimes we're last to recognize that if we come together, if the students come together, 2,200, we have about 3,000, 3,200 on the city election for mayor out of about over 20,000 residents.
You're saying in the city election, some 3,300 folks cast ballots.
Voted for mayor.
Voted for mayor.
Voted for mayor.
So this campus could literally
change.
Pick the mayor every 2 years or 4 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Even down to our representative for the House. 1,200 votes. State House. I believe Howard Hunter lost on his last election by I think about 1,200 votes. 2,200 changes the election cycle. Takes one. But we don't, because they're so going after causing confusion, that a lot of times we don't have the opportunity to tell the story and let our students, let the persons who sit on the couch know that they are very important. And that's what, I think that's what I tell my brother, that's their game all the time. Keep causing confusion. That way we don't have opportunity to educate. And once you tell people and empower them through educating, telling them what's going on, now they get motivated. Now they're trying to learn. And once you get, when you had these students up here, I was just listening to some of them talk, and I was becoming energized because it's great to hear students talk. A lot of times, older people only once talk. But when you hear students that they begin to understand that they control the power, that they can dictate what takes place in the state of North Carolina, in Elizabeth City, that's power. That's power that we have to tap through all. And North Carolina we're the largest, have the most four-year historically black colleges in our state than any other state. If the students come together and decide and push an agenda, everyone would be able to get their agenda. ECSU could have multiple buildings, more funding, if the students come together, but they have the power, and that's why we're glad that you were able to come here, come to the campus of Elizabeth City State University, because as Elizabeth City, as the mayor, the one thing that I let everyone know, we're proud to say we are the home of the mighty Vikings. We're recognizing, I love to come out and talk to our students. I try to bring multiple people out because they are the economic source that's in our city. They are the voting base in our city. We need Elizabeth City State University, and I'm a mayor that has no problem with saying that because I want the students to know that they are a valuable asset here.
Well, you also need it because this university is a major economic generator to this city as well. Robert, I'm going to go to you, Robert, because when Moral Mondays was taking place here, being led by Reverend William Barber and others, what was very interesting about that is I never forget, I spoke a couple of years later. It was Reverend Barber's last NAACP state conference dinner. And there were a group of 3 or 4 white women, and they said, I bet you never thought you would meet 4 white women as founders of an NAACP chapter. And they talked about founding this chapter in the mountains of North Carolina because through Moral Mondays, there were white folks who said, wait, they talking about the same stuff that I'm being impacted by. And so what you saw was what began as a largely black Moral Monday movement begin to totally change. That's what I'm talking about, how when you focus on those issues, how North Carolina literally can change as opposed to being a red state.
You're absolutely correct. Now, I think that when we look at the expansion of the map that Kamala Harris has exhibited since she got into this race, and then you can't ignore, Mark Robinson is there. He's a entity on the Republican side. And for our Christian conservative voters who might be watching, I want you to think to yourself the fact that Mark Robinson will probably still get 40% of the vote in North Carolina, despite saying he's a black Nazi. He will still get 40% of the vote. So for our guests, I would like to ask, what are you hearing in response to kind of this extreme MAGA agenda? And for people who are still undecided, have you talked to them about what Project 2025 is going to do to affirmative action? Have you talked about what it's going to do to HBCU funding? What are people saying when you talk about the agenda the other side of the aisle has?
Project 25 is, we know that the Heritage Foundation is the incorporators of that. And we want everybody to understand that Project 25 just doesn't stop at the presidential level. It also drifts down to governor's level, to the mayor's level. We can look back when we had the governor here, McCory. One of the first things he did was put all law enforcement under the Secretary of Public Safety, which is right in line with what went on with Project 25. So we want our young people and the people in the community, we try to ensure that we educate that this is also about the down ballot. And that this is not just related at the presidential level. This is not just, Project 25 is just not about Donald Trump. It is about a continuous attack on voters, young voters. It's that distraction that keeps us from being able to come together to know our own power, the power that we possess. Quickly, I did an op-ed a little while ago when the election director resigned. And, you know, it's difficult already to attract persons, quality persons in positions in the city, such as your county managers and your city managers, your superintendents. A lot of people don't want to come to an area that is chaotic. So it is very important that whites speak up against whites. That's one thing that we have a problem with in our area. You know, when it seems that the only time something goes wrong in the local area, it's always the blacks at the forefront. But yet I can't remember the last time that a white person was held accountable by white people. And I mean, it may be a lot of liberals and things differently, but here, at the end of the day, it still becomes white and black. And we catch a lot of havoc, but, you know, I have to speak truth to power. That's all I know. And if we would come together and hold people accountable, regardless of the color, they're white and they're not doing their job.
Or Republican or Democrat.
Or Democrat, but hold them accountable. I can look at when with all the financial things that were going on in Elizabeth City, as soon as my brother got elected along with the entire council, all of a sudden these issues come up. These issues about the audits. These issues about the LGC, which is now overgone. The audits have been late for probably 6-7 years before then, when there was a white city manager. But see, all of a sudden, it didn't happen then.
No, there was a town in Tennessee, same thing happened there, where the same issues came up. Right. So, but again, look, those are things that we know what's going to happen when African Americans take over. That's also still why you have to maximize power. Rebecca, your question.
Yes, so I've done campaign work in North Carolina, and one of the things that I remember is a lot of the foreign interference, specifically targeting disinformation and misinformation, targeted towards Black folks and especially Black registered voters. Well, it's happening again this year. So can you all talk about some of the messaging that you've been using on the ground to talk to skeptical people who are skeptical about turning out to vote this year?
Well, we definitely, the thing about it is, it's so much confusion, it's so much negativity that it turns people off. And that's where we have to let people know that you still have to go to vote. Just early when I was listening to Roland talk, when he talked about, we have a young lady running for a state superintendent. She said nationally, kill or pay-per-view, and let's kill Obama. Now, how can you be the Secretary of Education? When you're talking to our young people and you're telling people that we can pay, let's execute Democratic leaders in North Carolina. That's because confusion to the Republican Party is what they're looking for. And we have to make sure that we choose in this election right here, we have to let people know there's two paths. Either you can go with the path that is not about confusion, but let's talk issues, or you can continue to go with confusion. And one thing I found out since being mayor, if we talk to the issues directly, people will get behind you, because that's what we have to stay on track. We have to make sure that we continue to talk about attack on women's body. We have to make it simple and plain about Project 25. We have to make sure that we continue to educate the people at the ground level that it is just not about the presidency, but it's down ballot. And we have to always make sure that people who are capable of understanding bring plain talk is what I like to say. Let's talk plain to the people we are asking to go out and vote. And a lot of times we just don't go. We just automatically assume that everyone's going to vote Republican or everyone's going to vote. But we have to make sure that we talk about the issues. We have to talk about the attack on women's rights. We have to make sure that we talk about how they're trying to disenfranchise, how they're continuing to try to devalue our students and their vote. But we have to make sure that we educate and keep talking about the issues and stop talking about all this confusion and stop letting them bring scare tactics into our community.
All right, then. Jade, what's your question?
Okay, and my question is going to be, do you think particularly for the NAACP, there's an issue with mobilizing voters there or people coming on board, for instance, the churches, the nonprofit organizations, students, colleges? Do you think there's a bigger issue right there that's internal that can seep out into this election or any other federal election? And if so, what are you all working on to help with that mobilization and to close that boundary, that gap?
The NAACP North Carolina. What's happening?
Well, there's a lot of layers. One, there has been a push for phone banking, door-to-door canvassing. Here in Pasquotank County, we've done over 10,000 phone calls. We are knocking on doors. We also have a van. We call it Souls to the Polls, where we are offering rides to the polls. And again...
Now, is that every day? During
early voting. They call 252-421-1090. And they make their appointments.
Slow it down. Repeat it again.
252-421-1090. And they text, make their appointment. We will pick them up. We will take them to the polls. But again, it goes back to this media desert. The more we can disseminate.
Well, first of all, what are your media? What are your local media outlets? Where are you getting your information from?
We have the Daily Advance, which is our local newspaper.
Gotcha.
And the TV stations actually come out of Virginia.
I got it. Any black radio?
We have WGAI.
And what is that?
That is a local AM radio station. Of course, the universities...
Kirk shaking his head like, no, that ain't it.
But, and the key is because, once again, people don't want to talk about it because they're afraid of confusion. They're afraid of their sponsors being cut. They don't want to talk about the real issues and speak truth to power.
So are there any local digital outlets? Are there any citizen journalists? Anything online?
Nope.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we're continuing to be looking for information, because, and that's the reason why my brother said we're so excited that you're here.
Is there a radio station on the campus?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a radio station only. But that's why we're so excited because, once again, people are being politically correct by not talking the truth or skirting certain issues, don't want to say what's going on because they feel it's a backlash.
Well, that's one of the reasons why for us, I mean, look, our fan base, since we launched the show 6 years ago, we had 31,000 of our fans contribute to our show in excess of $2.5 million. And the reality is when you are dependent upon other sources, that's how you're going to control it. And so for me, being able to own it, control it, not sitting here worrying about that. I mean, something that needs to be said has to be said.
That's right. And
again, I think that's really important. Last question for you. Jade asked a question about in terms of the canvassing and things along those lines. Are you getting resources from the national organization? Are they funding efforts in North Carolina on the ground?
Yes, but that comes at the state level, and then of course the information, the training. We partner with a lot of.
So the state sending y'all money? The state conference and the NAACP? I'm just making sure y'all getting some money.
No, where we are, what we do is we partner with a lot of social justice organizations here, such as Black Voters Matter.
The state conference or NAACP sending y'all some money?
We get resources from the state conference.
I just check. Hey, I just want to know because if I need to call Derek Johnson, I call and say, bro, for the check.
And we get,
I ain't got a problem calling, so I'm letting you know. I ain't going to call nobody.
We get resources.
Okay, all right, keep checking.
And so the push again is that dissemination of information. For example, like my brother said, Morrow, who's running for state superintendent, there's so many people that had no idea about those comments that were released on CNN when they said, hey, put the execution of Obama on paper.
Oh, she got her damn
and we actually went to the Republican meeting when they advertised that she was coming. I was asked to leave.
Damn, I would have showed up.
But we kept enough people there to hear, and people need to know this. When somebody is talking about, executing the governor, Roy Cooper, executing Biden, and how can you, and now you're saying that you're going to be the state superintendent?
Right, of all education.
Of all of education.
And you illiterate.
And so
schools of child.
I ain't got a problem. Hey, listen, I ain't got a problem. There's some things y'all can't say. I ain't got a problem saying it. Hell, she was sitting right here. I said it too. You illiterate. So first of all, let me thank both of y'all. I appreciate it. We're glad to be here. And again, we're going to keep, our whole point is simple. That is, we know the issues that even mainstream media is not going to cover, which is why we do this every single day with my show and the other shows on the Black Star Network. So we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Folks, we come back, we're going to talk about crucial judicial rulings. I just got an email from the head of the Atlanta and the Georgia branch of NAACP. We'll tell you about a judge's ruling when it comes to voting there as well when we come back right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network, live on the campus of Elizabeth City State University. Back in a moment.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment. For the woman? Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Jill Stein, Green Party candidate for president. So why are Trump's close allies helping her? Stein was key to Trump's 2016 wins in battleground states. She's not sorry she helped Trump win. That's why a vote for Stein is really a vote for Trump.
Jill Stein, I like her very much. You know why? She takes 100% from them.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
There's nothing socialist about Kamala Harris.
Trump says Harris is a radical. I don't buy it.
Conservatives have a supermajority on the Supreme Court.
With a likely Republican Senate, those checks and balances will keep our country sane.
If Trump wins, he could end up with total control. I'm a conservative. I don't agree with Harris on everything, but she was a tough prosecutor, and she put bad guys in prison.
I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. I'm voting for Kamala Harris in November.
And I'm voting for Kamala Harris this fall.
Winners never back down from a challenge. Champions know it's anytime, any place. But losers, they whine and waffle and take their ball home.
Trump now refusing to debate a second time.
He did terribly in the last debate. He's so easily triggered by Kamala Harris.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. If you've got something to say it to my face.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished? There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Winners never back down from a challenge. Champions know it's anytime, any place. But losers, they whine and waffle and take their ball home.
Trump now refusing to debate a second time.
He did terribly in the last debate. He's so easily triggered by Kamala Harris.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. If you've got something to say it to my face.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hi, I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I don't play Sammy, but I could. Or I don't play Obama, but I could. I don't do Stallone, but I could do all that. And I am here with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Let's go. All right, folks, welcome back to Elizabeth City State University. Today in Nebraska, the state Supreme Court made a huge ruling impacting formerly incarcerated folks. They ruled that the state's top election official had no authority to declare a state law that restored the voting rights of those convicted of a felony to be unconstitutional. In July, the Secretary of State in Nebraska ordered county election officials to reject the voter registration of those with felony convictions, citing an opinion issued by the state attorney general. Now, the ACLU sued. They actually won today. And Rebecca, some 7,000 people formerly incarcerated have the right to vote. This was one of those just amazingly idiotic decisions, because you literally had the legislature pass a law, and the Secretary of State decided unilaterally that it was unconstitutional, and the AG backed it up. I've never heard of a Secretary of State and an Attorney General determining a law passed by the legislature to be unconstitutional. That ain't their damn job.
Look, y'all know I'm from Nebraska, and you see why I fight so hard about voting rights, because dealing with idiotic people who think that they get to tell the state legislative branch that they can't create rules, but instead it's going to be an administrative branch making the rules in Nebraska. So I talked to so many people from back home today. If you read the ruling, it's extremely scathing. The Secretary of State and the Attorney General was clearly out of bounds here. So now there's going to be additional 7,000 plus people who are eligible to vote. And do remember, in Nebraska actually splits its electoral college vote. And so in the Congressional District 2, which is largely the Omaha-Douglas County area, you're going to see real impact with what happens at the top of the ticket. Not only is the vice president in a very competitive race against Trump, but also we see that there's 2 U.S. Senate races that are on the ballot. We see there's an independent against the incumbent Republican. We see that race is tighten up. And then we see a Democrat against the other incumbent Republican. And we see that race is pretty interesting with Preston Love, who is a Black man and actually, I believe, ran one of Jesse Jackson's campaigns in the 80s. So that said, keep your eye on Nebraska. This is going to have an impact on what happens with that electoral college vote coming out of Omaha.
A federal court ordered the state and the Secretary of State to cease a recently implemented program to remove voters from the voting rolls between now and November 5th. The Northern District of Alabama could further order the state to issue guidance to all counties in Alabama to immediately restore deactivated voters unless those voters requested removal or are subject to removal for other reasons. The DOJ filed a lawsuit against Alabama and the Secretary of State in September, alleging that the Secretary of State's voter list maintenance program announced in August violated Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 by conducting a program intending to remove voters within 90 days of a federal election systematically. Jay, the reason this, I think, is huge because, again, in Alabama and recently in Virginia, they started doing this, and you had Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin whining and complaining about it. Even the Orange Man, when he was at the Bloomberg Economics Forum, was complaining about this. But the law is the law. You cannot start removing voters inside of 90 days of an election. And so my deal is, what the hell were y'all waiting on? You could have done it with 150, 120 days. No, they purposely waited until that point.
You're absolutely right. They could have done that. And also, you know, I admire the court, Alabama, the DOJ for asking for an injunction, because what an injunction legally is a court order issued to prevent a party from taking action that can cause irreparable harm. Here, that irreparable harm would be the systematic voter purge attempt program that they're trying to rename as another program. So I think that was absolutely the correct move to make. The DOJ had every right to be concerned, because what Alabama originally was considering as individuals, right? Private individuals who were suing for their rights. However, they failed to consider the United States as a whole in the state of Alabama and oversee that part of it. So I think that this injunction, I hope that is an indefinite injunction, and it was absolutely the right move to make.
Gerald Griggs, who runs the NAACP there, posted this shortly, a few moments ago. A second Georgia judge has enjoined the Georgia State Election Board, issuing a final order today. The judge ruled that the proposed rules are not in line with the Georgia Election Code. The Georgia NAACP was one of the intervening plaintiffs in this case. Here you had these nutcase MAGA folks who decided that, oh, let's actually do hand counting of ballots in Georgia. You even had Georgia election officials, Republicans, said, that's just dumb. We can't sit here and count ballots by hand. It goes to show you what happened after the last election when Steve Bannon, who's sitting behind in federal prison right now for contempt of court, when they said we're going to take over school boards and election boards, this is what they wanted to do by taking over the election boards. They wanted to control the elections. And here the court saying, ain't going to happen in Georgia.
Absolutely. You know, Gerald Griggs does an outstanding job over there at the NAACP. But this is why I don't understand why Democrats let Republicans take this term lawfare. Because what we're seeing in all of these cases is lawfare for Republicans on the institution of the right to vote. This is what voter suppression looks like in 2024. It's no longer Bull Connor standing outside with dogs and hoses. It's no longer troops being needed to send people in and out. These battles are happening in courtrooms and in state houses around the country. And what we're seeing, as Reverend Jackson has said for decades, that voter suppression is about skimming. All you have to do is get 1 out of every 100 people, let's say, to step out of line or to not be able to vote. And when you expand that out, that turns into 1,000, into 10,000, to 100,000, to 1 million people who are thereby disenfranchised. And when you do these schemes, state by state, district by district, just trying to skim off those small numbers of votes, that's how you end up with a phone call where a former president is saying, please find me 11,280 votes in order to swing an election. So we have to be cognizant of what they're working on, and we have to redouble our efforts, understanding that the Trump Supreme Court is going to fight tooth and nail to maintain voter suppression, but also for people who ask this question, well, what exactly has the Biden-Harris administration done for Black people? This is what it means to have a Department of Justice and a Civil Rights Division that is willing to fight for its community, as opposed to Jeff Sessions or Bill Barr, where they can actually take the municipalities to court and win back the right to vote for individuals.
Folks, now we ready? Okay, cool. All right, y'all. Again, one of the groups that have been on the ground, not just here in North Carolina, but all across the country, is Black Voters Matter. We've, of course, had Latasha Brown, Cliff Albright on our show on many occasions. Saeed Jasmine is sitting with us right now. Glad to see you here, man. So what's happened? Tell us what y'all doing in the Tar Heel State.
Oh, man, we're doing a lot. Thanks once again for allowing this opportunity. Shout out to everybody here. Viking Pride, Viking Pride, Viking Pride. I'm an Aggie, but I show love.
Hold on, that was a little weak there. I'm just saying, you shouted it out and like 3 people woke up.
You know what? That's true.
So why don't you do that again? Because, I mean, I don't want everybody, they're like, yeah, Viking Pride, Viking Pride, Viking Pride. That's what y'all sounded like. I'm just saying. So you want to do that again?
Let's do it again. Y'all ready? Viking Pride, Viking Pride, Viking Pride. All right.
Well, I'm so glad y'all did better the second time, because, woo, go ahead.
Well, listen, we got to be excited because tomorrow we're going to actually have an early voting march right here on this campus starting at 3 p.m.
Okay.
3 p.m. So we'll be here. So that's part of the work.
We will be here. Wish we could be here for that. We're going to be in Rocky Mount. Well, here's, why don't y'all do this here? Why don't y'all actually shoot some of the video and then send it to us? We can run it. Because we're at Rocky Mount tomorrow, where I'll read the church later. Then we're at Fayetteville State on Friday. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So tomorrow's early voting. Like, are y'all excited? Yeah. Who plans on voting tomorrow? Yeah. Everybody's hand should be up. I know I plan on voting tomorrow. I live in Pitt County, Greenville, North Carolina. Shout out to Congressman Don Davis over there. He used to represent our area, but unfortunately, because of gerrymandering, he's no longer in our...
Hold on, he here? He ain't seeing no text or nothing saying, hey, I'm sitting in the audience. You know you're going to be sitting your ass up here when he get done. I'm just letting you know. Don't be trying to sneak in here. He ain't... I mean, didn't even say, hey, I'm here. Right. Okay, yeah, we know you're here now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of work with partners across the state. I'm concerned primarily with the eastern region, and that's a really big region. But folks from Martin County to Pasquotank County, to Pitt County, Washington County, Terrell County, we've been all over these counties doing work.
When you say it's big, how many people are we talking about? How many black voters, but how many total voters are we talking about?
Probably about, I would say at least about 800,000 at least.
800,000?
I could be wrong. The congressman is here, so he could...
Well, first of all, one congressional district is 700,000.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so, but the reason I'm asking that, because the point is, when you look at numbers, again, I keep going back to, this is a margins election. Biden-Harris wins, Georgia by less than 12,000, Arizona by 10,000. And even you look at 2016, Trump won Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan by only 77,000 votes.
That's really low. That's actually,
That's combined.
Yeah.
3 states, 77,000 votes.
And North Carolina was a state that he won by his lowest margin of victory.
Yep.
So
I lost here in 2020 by 2.5 points.
Right. And so we have, I think we can beat Georgia here in North Carolina as well. We actually have the numbers to potentially turn out. We have to just turn out. And that's why the work our partners do on the ground is so important. So
what's the weakness in North Carolina? Is it, and I'm not picking on anybody, but is it not targeting rural North Carolina? Is that where, in terms of where your issues are?
We don't have Atlanta, but we have Atlantas in the state. We have Charlotte, we have Raleigh, we have Chapel Hill, Greenville, arguably. So we don't have that one hub, essentially, yet. Not yet. It's coming, though. Every day, people are moving here to the state. In fact, right here, I'm sure, too.
Or is the problem here, this is the sense that I've gotten in the conversations that I've had with so many different people, that the problem is when folk come into this state, whether you're talking about presidential candidates, whether you're talking about the DNC, whether you're talking about even grassroots groups, they split the state in half. And most of the time, money and resources go into Western because they're looking at numbers. But the thing that I keep saying, because I'm born and raised in Texas, and it's the same way. You have 254 counties in Texas. You cannot win if you only focus on your large blue counties.
Right.
The reason Republicans win in Texas is because they run up huge margins in those smaller counties all across the state. And so it seems as if the problem here is that there's so much energy focused on Western North Carolina, and you don't have much attention on Eastern North Carolina.
Well, I can't speak for, like, the parties, but I can speak for Black Voters Matter. And I can say that investment has been made. I'm sure one of these students here, a lot of these students have a Black Voters Matter hoodie, a T-shirt. Raise your hand if you have a hoodie, a T-shirt. So we've been here on the ground these last 4 years. So I know we've been here in these very rural parts in Windsor, North Carolina. In fact, we had one of our last bus tours, we went to a place called Lewiston, Woodsville. And that population is only about 200-something people, but we went there purposely because folks work at Purdue, right? And so we know that many people may not live in the actual area, but people from Purdue will be coming by the bus. And so we actually try to really go deep into those counties in the parts nobody wants to go to.
Are y'all also pulling precinct data? What I mean by that is I have conversations with people all the time. I was in Cincinnati a few weeks ago, and there's a brother, he's in Alpha, and he was talking about their get out to vote stuff, and he was describing what they're doing, and I literally said, that shit ain't gonna work.
Oh.
And he was like, damn, bro. I said, no, seriously. I said, he was talking about, well, we're going to games signing people up.
Sure.
I said, why are you not going to the Board of Elections and targeting the 15, 20 largest black precincts? Then pulling that data and then looking at the 2022 midterms, the 2020 presidential election, and see how many people are registered in that precinct and how many actually voted. I said, so if you see 700 people registered in that precinct, but only 150 voted, I said, that's who you should be targeting. I said, you're going to places where people likely already registered, as opposed to doing target, because when you have finite people and finite resources, you must be far more concentrated.
Sure.
And he said, it never occurred. He said, we didn't realize that data is public. I was like, it is. Right. And I think that for me, for a lot of folks out there, they're spending time with these get out the vote efforts, but it's not targeted and concentrated.
Sure. Well, we have a data department, so we do our best to be as data driven as possible. I can't say we get it perfectly right each time, but we certainly do our best. I know, for example, in Pitt County, where I'm from, we are specifically targeting areas where we know voter participation has been low, right? And so that's what we're on the ground right now doing that work. Tomorrow, for example, on our first day of early voting, so make sure you come out in North Carolina, we will be going out to areas where we know turnout has been historically low, but also people have moved too, Roland. A lot of people have moved because of the pandemic, because of the high cost of housing.
Right.
And so sometimes the data may not always necessarily reflect what's actually happening right then and there. So we hope that our efforts, as well as what I call hotspot canvassing, which is going to areas where we know folks will be at, will be gathering together. We hope those efforts will help with getting the turnout.
All right, then. Well, look, keep up the good work, and I'll tell Cliff and Latasha you handle your business.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Maybe they'll give you a raise.
Man, I hope so.
All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go to a break. We come back. I'm going to talk to Congressman Don Davis. Yeah, you coming up here since you slid in here. We'll chat with the Congressman next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Of 100 Republicans who worked in national security for Presidents Reagan, both Bushes, and for President Trump, now endorsing Harris for president.
She came up as a prosecutor, an attorney general, into the Senate. She has the kind of character that's going to be necessary in the presidency.
Vice President Harris is standing in the breach at a critical moment in our nation's history. We have a shared commitment as Americans to do what's right for this country. This year, I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Former generals, secretaries of defense, secretaries of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, CIA directors, and National Security Council leaders under Democratic and Republican presidents, Republican members of Congress, and even former Trump administration officials agree there's only one candidate fit to lead our nation, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Wrongfully convicted.
5 teenagers were arrested, tried, convicted, and sent to prison.
No men were exonerated.
What he did to us, he tried to end us.
Of course I hate these people.
So-called the Central Park 5.
Calling for execution. And let's all hate these people.
We cannot have this man go into office again.
And I want society to hate him.
We were innocent kids. The confessions were coerced.
Today, we are exonerated. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict.
This is about democracy being on the ballot.
I have absolutely no compassion.
Look at Kamala. She represents the kaleidoscope of the human family. There's something different happening in America. We will get the opportunity to build a future where we will be able to thrive and not just survive.
Kamala Harris has never backed down from a challenge. She put cartel members and drug traffickers behind bars, and she will secure our border. Here's her plan. Hire thousands more border agents, enforce the law and step up technology, and stop fentanyl smuggling and human trafficking. We need a leader with a real plan to fix the border, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Latasha from the A.
And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Got it. All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We're here at Elizabeth City State University. Glad to be here. Of course, North Carolina early voting begins tomorrow in this state. This is a critical state. Recent polling data came out just today showing Vice President Kamala Harris up 2 points here in North Carolina. They are doing lots of work in this particular state. She was here at East Carolina University on Sunday in Greenville. I was there while I interviewed her. And this is a state that they see that they can actually win. Joining us right now, one of 3 African-American members of Congress from North Carolina, Congressman Don Davis. Glad to have you here. So let's talk about what I was talking earlier with the Brother from Black Voters Matter and some other places. I mean, again, when you look at this state, you got the Black Belt, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, but so much attention is always focused on West. The reality is, there's a lot of black votes in eastern part of this state.
Roland, let me say first, you look great in the Elizabeth City T-shirt there.
Well, here's the deal. And I have a standard rule. I only wear HBCU gear on my show, places where I've been to.
All right.
So if I'm correct now, this is the 59th HBCU out of the 107 I've actually been to. So this is the 59th. So
well, you look great.
The rest of them, if they ain't invited me, I don't wear them.
And Elizabeth City, Elizabeth City State University is in North Carolina's 1st congressional district, and I'm proud. Viking pride. But let me, before I get into your question, I want to share something because we're talking about voting, engagement, empowerment. I remember at the North Carolina General Assembly, and you came. Mm-hmm. When there was a bill being rolled out in the appropriations, and there was language about closing the university.
Yep.
And if you remember, within about a 24-hour window, about 10,000 signatures came in to us. Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about empowerment, when people care about something and they engage. Well, guess what? We are here today because the people engaged, and I still remember to this day.
Oh yeah, no, I remember.
You were getting the word out then, and the people spoke loudly, and it gave us all the ammunition as I was in the state Senate to go in and make the tough arguments. And as a result, we're here today. I want to give a big shout out to the mayor, my friend Kirk, and to Dr. Edmonds, who's leading us right now. But to your point, when we look at North Carolina, here's the deal.
Oh, that's the band.
Oh, that's the band.
No.
Oh.
I know the audio problem. I was like, Anthony, what the hell going on? That's the band.
The band's heading home. Yeah, they're jamming out. Okay, so when you look at North Carolina, here's the deal. Candidates running statewide, they want to win Wake County, go to Durham, Orange, heading over to Guilford, Winston, over in Forsyth, down to Mecklenburg. You have Buncombe sitting out in the far west. But you cannot win this state without Eastern North Carolina. If you look at the history, even of our gubernatorial elections, many of the governors, Democratic governors in particular, have come from Eastern North Carolina. The challenge with Eastern North Carolina is Eastern North Carolina is so rural. And the answer to the question is about 748,000 or so in the congressional district. You're talking over 304,000 African Americans, about the BVAP, the black voting age population, 39%. Mm-hmm. That's in the new sliced up map, because G.K. Butterfield, who I replaced,
right.
some say, you're in the Butterfield seat. And I say, do you realize this? He's been retired for about a year and a half, and this is the fourth different map that we've been on.
Wow.
Fourth. So North Carolina has not been a stranger to redrawing maps and going to court. Matter of fact, the court date's been set for next year of 2025 on this exact boundary again.
But see, this is why I keep explaining to people when we say why voting matters, because there was a point a few years ago where Democrats could have had a 6-to-1 majority on the Supreme Court. And then you had an election. Sherry Beasley loses by 401 votes. Then it was 4-3. Then the next election, right now it's 5-2. You had Republicans trying to target Justice Anita Earls because she gave an interview talking about diversity. And so when we're talking about the court, we saw what happened in Wisconsin. When the Democrat won there and flipped it 4-3, that's how they targeted political gerrymandering, brought ballot drop boxes back. And so when you use your voting power and then you control the Supreme Court, now when laws are passed, they could shut them down, or they can actually they can ratify them as well. So all these elections matter.
That's right. I'm going to use an analogy of sports, because we're in football season and so forth right now. The judges are like the referees. I mean, they're making the calls, the interpretations. So that's so essential. And when we look at democracy overall, and when we go to the polls to cast our votes matter. And often, unfortunately, sometimes we don't pay attention to the judges. And that's why it is so important for us to pay attention to judges at every single level. And I want to be clear, I've been supportive and I've shared my support. I was glad to see our vice president in Eastern North Carolina, at East Carolina University. But we're going to take that vice off of vice president and make her president. And back to the point, there could be a couple of appointments sitting behind this. So I'm going to say this. It's good to see you here, but I really have been on a mission. And I think all of us, the eyes across the country, all kind of eyes are looking at what's going to happen in North Carolina. And when you really then peel back the onion, a lot's going to depend on what happens in Eastern North Carolina.
So which is why, so I'm going to throw this here. I was there Sunday, and I really do believe that, and I haven't seen it at one of these campuses. And I know homecoming with a lot of the schools, but I believe between now and November 5th, the vice president's campaign needs to do one of those rallies on an HBCU campus. It needs to be either this campus or Fayetteville State. And so you going to push them to do that?
We're going to keep pushing.
Okay.
I've been, you heard the music, the band leaving. We've been beating the drum on this. Okay. And they responded. They came to Eastern North Carolina, to East Carolina University, but I hear loud and clear HBCU.
Oh, absolutely. Last question. And of course, all these political people, I hate a lot of political talk in D.C., But Republicans, I'm gonna throw you a curve here. So Republicans are floating in D.C. that if they control the House, you're gonna flip to their side. They literally are circulating that in D.C.
Well, this is the first I've heard of that, but I want to be very clear that I'm a registered Democrat. I've been a part of this party, and we're working hard every single day for the people of Eastern North Carolina. And I really try to follow and listen to my constituents. This district, as I've shared before, I mean, it's changed. And it continues to get sliced up and sliced up. But what that means to me is I still need to listen to constituents and figure out what's important to them. So often in Eastern North Carolina, if you're east side 95, northeast, you feel left out often of the process.
Got it.
And for me, it's been so important to be a strong voice, to tell the stories. But, you know, I will be very clear and plain spoken. And that is, I am about fighting for constituents. And that's what I've done.
Well, it was a couple of black Republicans, they were some meetings in D.C., and I was like, I said, next time I see them, I'm going to ask. I said, I don't do y'all rumors. I said, so I don't do rumors. I ask folk direct. So I told both of the brothers, I was like, yeah, I'm going to ask.
This is the first I've heard of it.
Well, good. I'm just letting you know the stuff Republicans are trying to float out there. But again, but that's also electoral politics, how they try to play games as well when it comes to the vote, because what people don't realize, every House seat is up every 2 years. So you on the ballot in November.
That's right. That's right. And at the end of the day, Roland, you know this. You understand this. I mean, we're not going to agree all the time on every single issues, you know, but there are core things that we are going to agree on and we're going to work through. I mean, right now, Project 2025, are you serious? We want to abolish the Department of Education? Are you kidding me? You want to get rid of Head Start? Are you serious that you want to limit and restrict public housing? I mean, come on, give me a break. North Carolina, all the attention you've been talking about, western part of the state. Now, we've had our fair share of natural disasters in the east. So it's a surprise in the west. They want to get rid of the National Weather Service.
Now, that's dumb.
To privatize it. I mean, because they don't believe that climate change is real.
Well, there was a story that I saw, it was done a couple of years ago, of the number of people who moved to Asheville. They said because they were afraid of climate change, and they said, hey, it's not going to impact us here. And it did. So the reality is climate change can impact you wherever you are in this country.
But let me share this with you, Roland. So we fought for over a decade in the North Carolina General Assembly to expand Medicaid. I went to D.C. thinking it was going to be done before I left. Went to D.C., became a member of a co-chair of the State Medicaid Expansion Caucus in D.C. because there's still many southern states that hadn't expanded. So we went to work, continued fighting. We finally expanded it. Here's where I'm heading. In Eastern North Carolina alone, with that expansion is the opportunity as it builds up for 95,000 Eastern North Carolinians to have access to care. And when you build it up, another 3,000 jobs. We are the sickest in the state. We have the most health care disparities in the state. We have the greatest educational needs in the state, the gap that exists, and our economy is sluggish. When North Carolina catches a cold, Eastern North Carolina is in ICU.
Well,
and here's where I'm heading with Project 2025. You're talking about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. You're talking about the state of North Carolina being in ICU, and if that's the case, we don't have a chance.
Well, I tell them, you can't tell me you pro-life if you don't want folks to have health care. That's all I'm saying. Congressman, we appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks so much.
All right,
then, try to sneak in there, but I got you in there. I want to go to Camille Winbush. Hold up. You're still hooked up there, so take the microphone off there. Camille Winbush is National Director of the Campaigns and Field Programs, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Camille, glad to have you here. I still got my panel here is Camille. Camille, explain to folks about 1-866-OUR vote. Early voting starts here tomorrow. It's already starting in Georgia. It's already been happening in Virginia. And you're seeing the efforts to stop folks from voting. That's what y'all are focused on, right?
Absolutely. So 866-OUR-VOTE is the election protection hotline, and we are available year-round to support voters who may have questions or problems voting. We operate with trained legal volunteers who are able to assist voters whenever they have issues. We've got convenient ways for folks to reach us, where they can call us, they can text us, they can reach out to the web chat, they can find us on FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, as well as on WhatsApp. And so that's a really great way for folks to reach out if they have issues with, maybe they don't know where their absentee ballot is. Maybe they don't know where their early voting location is. Maybe they have an issue with their voter registration. Maybe they show up at the polls and they felt that the poll worker treated them inappropriately. There's a place for folks to come. We're able to walk them through their issue, listen to them, report it into our database where we're tracking all of these issues. And then we have this really robust team of state and national partners, over 300 of them, a part of our Election Protection Coalition, who are there on the ground to solve those problems. We call election officials, we can write letters, we can get witness statements, take photos, gather evidence, and if necessary, go into court and actually help those voters.
Again, you say it's year-round, and when are you most active? Obviously, Election Day, but just give folks out there a sense of the kind of calls y'all actually get and some of the crazy stuff that's happening out there when folks are voting.
Yeah, so we, of course, are scaling up. This is our prime time. We found in 2020, a lot of voters had actually shifted. We used to get all the calls, the bulk of the calls happening on Election Day, but now with the increase in popularity of early voting, we get a ton of calls in October. We had over 250,000 calls last in 2020, our last presidential election. And we see a whole range of issues. One of the examples that I like to show about the hotline is how they can be effective. Back in 2020, there was this massive robocall scheme where two white supremacists wanted to stop Black folks from voting. And they targeted Black folks in Cleveland, they targeted them in Philadelphia and Detroit, and they sent this massive robocall out and said, hey, did you know that early voting, you're good on the rolls? That means that they're going to find you, they're going to find out your old warrants, they're going to be able to track you down and make you submit to mandatory vaccines. They can make you pay vaccines, fines. And so this was a very clear scheme to suppress the vote in Black communities and swing states. And so because we had the information from the robocall, the information come into the hotline, we're able to sort of step in and go to court and get a great award on behalf of the voters so that they wouldn't be turned away from the polls. We also have a system to be able to sort of, mass mobilize.
Talking about, Camille, you're talking about those two races, Jacob Wohl as well as Jack Burkman, and they got sentenced to 500 hours of community service. But they've been doing all kind of ridiculous stuff for the last several years. And yeah, they got busted big time on that one.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that voters this election know that there's a lot of maybe misinformation out there, that maybe just folks who are deliberately scheming to deprive them of their right to vote. And so it's really great to be able to have a trusted messenger. We are a nonpartisan hotline. We've been doing this day in, day out for the last 20 years. And so we have trained legal folks who are able to walk them through every step of the laws. And, the laws are constantly changing. So it's helpful for folks to just have that peace of mind to know that we're not trying to sway a voter one way or the other. We're just trying to give them the factual information they need to vote.
Camille, we appreciate it. 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Laura's committed for civil rights under law. Y'all been doing great work with this for a long time, and so we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Rebecca, with early voting starting in this state tomorrow again, I can't say it enough that this state, and I'll be very clear, this state could very well put Vice President Kamala Harris over the top. She wins North Carolina. That changes the game when having to win one of that so-called blue wall of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania when it comes to electoral college votes.
Since you're in North Carolina tonight, I need to shout out North Carolina Black Alliance because all the incredible work they're doing across the state, especially with their Raising the Bar program, which is doing extensive work with HBCU students on all of the institutions across the state, making sure that HBCUs are working in concert as they're increasing their civic education and civic engagement on campus. One thing to note is that some of our students with North Carolina Black Alliance was able to secure an early voting location, a polling site on their campus at North Carolina A&T. A&T is 19,000 students. And so earlier in the broadcast, Roland, you talked about how the congressional district was split, how A&T was split across 2 congressional districts, but it also happened in the state house races as well. Both, I believe, the state house and the state Senate side. North Carolina A&T was split into multiple parts. So I say all this is that North Carolina has a real opportunity to actually get out, show up, and vote. And it's so important that people do this, especially when we know that the scheme in North Carolina, the state legislature was very clear. They were caught on audio, they were caught on tape when they said that they were surgically trying to remove as many Black voters off of the rolls to split up and dilute Black political power by breaking up communities as redistricting was occurring in North Carolina. And to the congressman's point, he's still going to be impacted by this constant redrawing of political districts in North Carolina. So I say all this. I try to tell voters, especially those who are skeptical, I'm not going to tell you to vote because people bled and died literally for your right to vote. I'm encouraging you to vote because there are people who are actively trying to stop you from voting. If there isn't any other reason, it's because someone doesn't want you to vote. That's why you should turn out to vote in North Carolina.
Elections are about math. I said earlier, elections are about math. And here's the math, again, to understand this election here. When I look at the numbers, Wisconsin, 10 electoral college votes. Michigan, 15 electoral college votes. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral college votes. North Carolina, 16. And so we talk about what's happening with Muslim vote in Michigan. The reality is this here. If Vice President Harris loses Michigan and wins North Carolina, there's still a pathway to victory. And so that's why this is important. There are more electoral college votes here in North Carolina than in Michigan and Wisconsin. Can Robert hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Sorry, I hear you now, Roland. Look, you're absolutely correct. I think this also shows the shift in voting demographics away from the Rust Belt, away from those traditionally Democratic base from the Kennedys and the 60s, et cetera, to the Sun Belt, where we're seeing, because of this mass migration, kind of the reverse of the Great Migration, people moving from the north to Atlanta, to Nashville, to Charlotte, to Asheville, all across the South. We're seeing a shift in the way that these races are run. And if we have a presidential election where Kamala Harris is able to win North Carolina, able to win Georgia, able to win Nevada, able to win Arizona, then that says to the party going forward that we have to cater to the needs of those areas. So when we talk about what has to happen educationally throughout the South and transportation-wise throughout the South, it means we have to start delivering these states for progressive candidates who actually believe in the values of those areas and actually believe in investing in such a way that will help us be able to develop and catch of many other parts of the country. Look, the squeaky wheel is going to get the grease, and the way that we squeak the loudest is by making sure we turn out and vote.
Jade, we've said this over and over and over again. We said it over and over again, that if Democrats are paying attention, you cannot simply focus on large cities. You can't win Georgia unless you're talking to Albany, Savannah, Jonesboro, Statesboro, Athens, Augusta, those places. Same thing here in North Carolina. And so there has to be a strategy, a rural strategy. Yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris released her rural economic plan to specifically speak to these areas. That's exactly what should be happening.
Yes, Roland, and I think that you're ingenious for going to see these HBCUs, particularly in North Carolina, because I've spoken at Fayetteville State before, and I really do hope that they take that opportunity, because that is a rural area. However, it is a very powerful area. It could actually decide a lot of things in her favor. Those are areas that don't, they're not visited often when you talk about people running for office or political figures or that time of the year. So I do think these HBCUs, these universities in North Carolina and other states, I think that is going to be a big shift when parties are looking at potential voters to vote in their favor.
All right, Jade, Robert, and Rebecca, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Let me thank all the folks who were panelists on today's show as well. It'd be also a show appreciation to Elizabeth City State University for being on this campus. I've had a great time. My first time visiting this campus. I'm glad to be here. We were here covering the shooting 3 years ago in Elizabeth City, but the first time on the campus, and so I'm certainly glad to be here. Folks, don't forget tomorrow we are going to be in Rocky Mount. Y'all should have the graphic there, so let me know if you do. There you go. We're going to be at Word Tabernacle Church, 821 Word Plaza in Rocky Mount. So I want to see you guys there. Friday, we're going to be in the Seabrook Auditorium on the campus of Fayetteville State University. And so look forward to that. And so we are spending the next couple of days here in North Carolina. As I said, early voting begins tomorrow in North Carolina, folks. Please get out and vote. Don't wait until Election Day. As we always say, call your friends, your family, your church members, your fraternity brothers, sorority sisters. Call everyone to make sure that they're maximizing their vote. Because again, if we vote our numbers, I can guarantee you we are going to win. Folks, don't forget, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. You can send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal is R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Also, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide, Target, Books A Million. Also, you can get the audio version on Audible. So again, we're here. Rocky Mount tomorrow, Fayetteville State on Friday, and then I'll be at Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas on Sunday. Early voting starts in Texas on Monday, and so I'll be there with Reverend Frederick Douglass Haynes III. We'll be broadcasting live from Dallas on Monday as well. Folks, that's it. Y'all know how we end the show. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be scared.